This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
How's it going today?
Oh, I'm feeling ready for this talk.
All right. Well, before we jump in, I have to do a quick fact check on myself.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
2 episodes back, I mentioned prebiotics. I gave everybody a trivia fact. That
Hold on. Which book was this about?
This is Healthy Gut, Healthy You, Part 2.
All right.
And we talked about prebiotics, which, remember, are the foods that feed our gut bacteria. And I said that all prebiotics are fiber, and that was technically not true because some prebiotics like polyphenols and lactulose are not technically fiber. So just fact checking myself there.
So maybe there's sugar.
Yeah, I'll say that most prebiotics are fiber and that not all fiber is prebiotics. There's
Wonderful.
my correction.
Okay, well,
all
very
right,
good.
Thanks for that.
You are you're off the chart on that one then. And so, I was thinking while, in between our recording sessions about podcasting, we've landed in this world of podcasts. And, people are out there listening, and we're hoping that they're tuning in and dialing up maybe on a drive or a jog or on their exercise bikes. I don't have much experience with podcast world. I'm kind of new to it. How about you?
Well, I did a lot of podcast listening up until this point. I love listening to podcasts. But yeah, I'm a newbie of talking and doing this whole podcast myself.
Well, I'm going to pull the producer in maybe on this because when I'm telling people what we're doing, a lot of people that I bump into say, I'm a novice at this. How do you do it? What's it about? You don't. It's not like a radio where you turn the dial on. So, producer, can you help us with helping people spread the word if they're not new to podcasting?
So if they are new to podcasting.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
So
yeah.
You're partially correct in that it's not like the radio where you just turn it on and go. But the thing to know about podcasting is podcasts are, radio on demand. Basically, you're doing a talk show. You're discussing the books. You're talking about health things, but it's the same thing that you would hear on a radio show about the same thing. So this is basically put into a compartment and people can open it whenever they want to. So how do they do that? The answer to that is anywhere that you go, if you just Google podcast platforms or Apple, if you're an iHole, as I call it, if you're an Apple user, just go to Apple Podcasts. But Spotify seems to be the new darling of podcasts. It took them a while to get into the podcast realm. But if you go to any of those platforms, if you're used to listening to streaming music or anything like that, most of them also have a podcast partition. So if you type in whichever podcast you're looking for, like Health Geeks Book Club, then it will come up in the search, and then you just click it. And then the beauty of podcasting is people can subscribe. So how that works is so
if they found our podcast, now the next thing would be to subscribe to it, right?
Right, yeah. And
we want you to do that, everybody.
Yes, and because what happens is whatever platform you're listening to, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon, Audible, any of those, basically anywhere you find podcasts, once they're anywhere, they're everywhere. Then you hit subscribe, and what happens is your platform of choice looks every time you log in to see if there's a new episode, and if there is, it automatically pulls it down for you. Well, so all you have to do is hit play on whichever one you want.
So hopefully we're going to subscribe, we're going to play, and today...
And leave a review and a like if you can.
Okay.
And a rating if you
help
can.
Us a lot.
Yes, it really does.
Because we're trying to get the word out about our topic, right?
That's exactly right.
And thank you, Timothy Beeman.
You're welcome.
So today our book is by Dr. Jeffrey Blair, who has written a book called Unleash Your Inner Health, Harness your body's desire to be healthy and fit in 21 days. That sounds like a plan, huh?
Yeah.
So, who is Jeffrey Blair? Well, we're broadcasting out of Winston-Salem, and he's one of our local authors. So we always like to, check into what our local friends are spending their hours on thinking about and writing about. So who is he? Well, he is a doctor of nutritional science, and he is a master herbalist, and he has an AAMA certification. Kristen, were you familiar with that?
No, and I Googled it. I cannot figure out what he means by board certified by the AAMA. When you Google AAMA, it brings up the American Association of Medical Assistants.
Yeah, and
is
I
he
think
a medical assistant?
Well, I guess he's certified, and there is a sort of certification process to become an assistant, a medical assistant. So that was kind of what I determined as well. And he says in here he's not a doctor, and he's writing this book to provoke thought. He is a fellow of the Naturopathic Research Foundation, and he's authored 4 other books. He's a consultant to the nutritional supplement industry, and he's married. He has a family. He's got dogs, and he's not afraid to take on the controversial topics of the day, he says, including medical cannabis, the failures of modern medicine, and failed diets. And I think that's what we're going to start talking about in his book.
That's right. And he owns a coffee shop now, too,
Oh,
doesn't he,
yeah, I
with
love his
family?
coffee. Yes, it's the Coffee Mill in Louisville, North Carolina. Stop by and get a great cup of coffee. Visit with friends.
It's a great, cozy little atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
there. All right, so let's dive in. What did you think of the first part of the book, or what were some of your takeaways, Eleanor?
You know how I'm always kind of analytical. I got to say, okay, who published the book? Where did it come from? All that kind of thing. And so when we look at that, this was published in 2017, so it's somewhat current.
Mm-hmm.
And it was copyrighted by Dr. Jeffrey Blair, all rights reserved. And so I'm saying it's self-published.
Yeah.
I was not able to determine if it had been through a review process. And he's got chapters in here. There are 8 chapters. And the way he structures them is he's got little sections with headings, and then at the end there's an action plan. So he sort of summarizes his ideas at the end of the chapter with, here's the summary of what I've said, and here's the plan of action I'm suggesting. And I think that's a good structure because it's easy to reference as you're reading it. And like I said, his purpose in writing the book, as he said, was to provoke thought. And he has some really wonderful notes in here. I'll read one of them in the introduction. He says that he's talking about data. Oh, and since he is talking about data, I noticed he didn't really have a bibliography. And I always like to be able to find out where the ideas are coming from. So I think that would help if he did an addenda to this. But he says the data in a 2012 report by the UK-based Alliance for Natural Health International showed that adverse reactions to pharmaceutical drugs are 62,000 times more likely to kill you than food supplements. And I think that's an interesting comment. He also has a relationship with the Orthomolecular Medical Group. And we've talked about them in one of our other books, I think, where they have a news service. And there were no deaths whatsoever from vitamins in the year 2014, whereas we see frequent reports of pharmaceutical overdoses or abuse. The 32nd annual report from the American Association of Poison Control Centers shows no deaths from multiple vitamins, and there are no deaths whatsoever from vitamin A, niacin, vitamin B6, or any other B vitamin. There are no deaths from vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, or from any vitamin at all.
Okay, well, that might be true, but I felt like those statements were a bit bold, and
very
because
bold.
He didn't have any references, I went on to the internet and found
Dr. Google.
Well, PubMed, actually.
Good, that's better.
But I found that another article estimated 23,000 people end up in the ER each year for problems from supplements. Mm-hmm. So they're not killing us, but they're not necessarily perfectly safe at the same time either. And he gets into, with medicine, you have to do your research and you have to know what you're getting into instead of blindly follow. And I agree with that, but I also think that's the case with supplements as well. And I do like that he's painting the picture. We got to look out for medicine. But I was also a little alarmed that he seemed to be painting the picture that supplements are all absolutely safe and no worry about them either.
And since you mentioned that, at the end of his book, he has a listing of herbals and vitamins. He calls it the herb doctor's medicine chest. And he goes through them and he gives them scientific names, common names, the part of the plant that's used for the benefit that he's suggesting, where you would find it, its habitat. And I thought that was kind of an abbreviated reference. There's so many herbal books, guides that have this kind of information in it, but he selected some that he found to be his favorites, I think is what I found in here. And yeah, so when you look at plants and you look at how supplements are made or even pharmaceuticals, raw ingredients, because we do, I think, at least I'm willing to accept that a lot of our pharmaceuticals have come from chemicals that plants make. And we've learned how to synthesize them and, whatever. And one of the reasons that we have done that is because we know that plants can have contaminants in them. They can be grown in waters that have heavy metals and get the heavy metals in their tissues. They can have air drift, environmental drift with contaminants that land, through rain. So we know that they're or the application of pesticides and herbicides in farming practices. So there are lots of reasons that we need to be careful about the raw ingredients that go into any of our foods or into our supplements or into our medical therapeutics. And I think that when you look at the collecting habits of those folks, who knows what the plant really is, and they're collecting them and drying them and putting them in powders and setting them on docks in Thailand or Cambodia, because a lot of these things do not grow in the area where they're used. So you have to be really careful. I appreciate your caution.
Yeah.
So, all right. So moving on. He talks about symptoms, chronic pain. He thinks cholesterol is a hoax. And he talks about how our brains need cholesterol and our some of our hormones are based on cholesterol. And so this idea where we're restricting cholesterol, whether endogenous or exogenous is another conversation, but the ones that we bring in from the outside would be called exogenous cholesterol. So when they're saying don't eat the fatty meats, don't eat the oils, these are things that might contribute to cholesterol elevations in our bloodstream, and then they're connecting that to plaque development in our cardiovascular system and then risk for cardiovascular adverse events. And he's saying that's a hoax because our brains need cholesterol. And so I have seen some interesting work coming out about that. Have you, as in your nutrition world, are we rethinking cholesterol, or do you agree with him that?
Yeah, we no longer think that we need to restrict cholesterol from our diet. So eggs used to be a no-no because they're high in cholesterol, and shrimp. But we know that it's not the dietary cholesterol that can increase our body's cholesterol because from what I understand, our bodies can change how much cholesterol we're making based on what we're putting in. And so it kind of keeps this homeostasis.
It's homeostasis, right?
Right. But a high intake of saturated fats is still considered to be a reason for the high cholesterol. And as he points out here, too, that an intake of a lot of sugar or processed carbohydrates can also raise triglyceride levels. And so it's not just the fats that can affect that lipid profile.
Yeah, and I think our other authors are also recommending no white food things, processed foods, restricted. So he's in agreement with some of our other authors, too, I think.
Right.
Yeah. What about the gluten thing? It's not gluten, it's the glyphosate.
Yeah, I've heard that theory before. It's I think it could be either.
Yeah, and he just gives a very brief, he brings up a topic, like light hits it, and then he's on to the next one.
Right, yeah.
But he does say this is from his blog. So he has little blog excerpts. Yeah. Uh-huh. So you kind of bump along here. It's a very small book. It's an easy read. It's not difficult. Did you find it a difficult read?
No, very quick. And like you said, just little brief points that he's bringing up about each thing. Mm-hmm. I have to say that it perturbed me that he said, I'm not going to give you a diet plan, but you should follow the keto diet.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I understand where you're trying to go with that, but then went into you should eat high fat, moderate protein, and no white carbs. And then going into these diet-ish terms like have a cheat meal occasionally. Well, if you're not on a diet, then you're not cheating, right? And I didn't really appreciate that, but I could understand what he was trying to say, is that when we're too harsh on ourselves, that it can backfire. And anytime you're trying to eat in a particular way, you have to be, kind, and you have to be flexible and not be too rigid with that. So I could see where he was going.
Yeah, but I know the language thing I think is important,
Very.
the words that we use. And so when someone hears that word that maybe doesn't have a lot of experience with transforming their health, then that gets kind of built into I get to cheat, and then that's not such a psychologically good
mentality.
Yeah, right. So I agree with you. Words can be powerful.
Yeah,
and the power of that, and that the 4 wisdoms of the Mayans. Be impeccable with your words.
Oh,
yeah, that's one of them. I like that. So
words matter tremendously. I agree. So, but there's some really cool things at the end of the book that I'd love to talk with you about, Eleanor. Okay. He talks about certain foods and drinks and supplements and why we might use them. So I thought we could just kind of bring them up and talk about them with our audience.
Well, I think that's kind of where I was going too, because one of the ones I had never heard of that he just adores is this Geogulan tea.
Oh, good for you for trying to say that. I wasn't even going to go there.
But the word gynostemma, I keep looking at, I wanted to look up the derivation of that, and I didn't get to. But when he was talking about the Geogulan tea, and Dr. Blair, you can correct me on this. Anyway, he was talking about people that drink this tend to have a long life. And it made me think of the book we read about the Blue Zones. Mm-hmm. And I didn't remember reading about any of them drinking this tea. They were drinking that mugwort vodka. But, tea was important in the Blue Zones. Have you ever tried this tea?
I have not.
He says its first written history of drinking this tea was in 1406. And it's known throughout China as the immortality herb. So I think we need to find some.
I think I tried to Google it, and it wasn't really easy to find in any local areas. But I do know that he works with a health food store to kind of consult with them in the area. So maybe you can find it there. I'll tell you, though, he brings up Kava tea.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that one.
I had some of that last night.
Did you? Have you had it before?
Yes.
Okay, this is something you're familiar with.
Yeah, there's a stress relief tea by a popular brand. I'm not going to think of the brand. I think it's Traditional Medicinals. But so they have a stress relief tea with kava in it. And in the book, Dr. Blair says it tastes like muddy pepper water. Mm-hmm. And yeah, last night as I was drinking it, I think this blend includes some other things that can drain that out. But towards the end of my tea, I'm like, oh yeah, I can taste the pepper and mud.
Yeah. So was it delightful?
It was okay.
Did you feel stressed?
I didn't feel. So he describes it as you feel numb in the mouth at first, and then kind of an overall sense of calm throughout your body. I didn't feel that way. I don't know if he's drinking a stronger tea.
Or maybe just maybe just kava.
Yeah.
And not a blend.
Yeah. But It might have been Yogi Stress Relief. Thank you.
Have you had it, Tim? Oh, okay. Yeah. I might have tea party the next time we broadcast.
All right.
Well, I'm glad you tried that because in here he's saying studies indicate that this tea stimulates the release of nitric oxide in the endothelium of the blood vessel, thereby lowering high blood pressure. So, maybe. In a double-blind study, genocides from Gulan administered to those with hypertension showed 82% of the study participants reported lower blood pressure. Well, I'd love to see that study. 82% reduction is substantial. So I'd like to see who were the participants, how many participants, what was their health status. He said they had hypertension. Had they already had events or not? There's just so many things I would want to know about that data, and I can't find it.
Right.
So,
yeah, that would
but
be
boy,
nice
that sounds interesting.
It does.
Make the heart stronger.
I enjoyed reading about beets.
Mm-hmm.
That's something. So, do you eat beets?
Yes, I do.
I like beets a
Yes.
lot.
Now, I avoided them for many years. It was kind of funny. My mother would serve them. My mother was a great cook and had just beautiful plates when she plated dinners. We didn't get to just heap on food. They were portion controlled, and we didn't even think anything about it. We just had dinner,
Mm-hmm.
But the color, she was always into color, and beets gave great color on a plate.
Mm-hmm.
And she would sometimes pickle them, and the pickled beets are really good. Harvard beets, I don't know. But I like beets. I like roast beets now. I do them on my roasting vegetables and think, oh, this is so good.
Yes.
How do you eat them?
I love roasted beets on a salad with feta cheese or goat cheese. It's like the perfect combination. Yeah. But beets are popular among athletes because they do have some evidence behind them about increasing endurance, increasing
the health of the vessels, blood vessels.
Yeah, your blood flow to the brain,
Yep.
to the lungs. It helps you breathe better. And then there's an amino acid in there that can supposedly prevent or reduce fat accumulation in the liver.
Mm-hmm. Take care of your liver. Oh, we love our livers.
That's right. So I love beets, like roasted beets in salads, and there's even a way to put them in a smoothie, like beets and berries, where you kind of it will take away some of that earthy flavor from the beets. And you can also do like beetroot powder.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what he said he does.
Well, I will tell you from my fun of teaching medicine, when you're talking about urinalysis, one of the signs sign is something that you see, a symptom is something you feel. So when a patient says, my urine has blood in it, that causes alarm. And people go, oh, I'm dying, there's something wrong with me. Well, one of the first things you ask a patient is, have you been eating beets or any other food? There are a few other foods that will, as you metabolize them, that color comes through and you think that it's blood, but it's not. It's just a byproduct of the digestion. So you have to be aware of that.
Good heads up, yes.
Yeah, because you can all of a sudden be making appointments. It's not necessary.
Right. What else does, he talks about pomegranate juice.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually, I used to drink orange juice in the morning to take my medicine, and I recently switched to pomegranate juice just for fun because I'm like, well, if I'm going to have juice every day, might as well have this very rich in antioxidant pomegranate juice that I always walk past in the grocery store because it is expensive, but he did influence me to make that change.
And you like it?
Uh-huh. And I also, I used to make my own kombucha. Does
I have not been there yet.
kombucha
I have not
is?
been there yet. That's one of the things that is still out there for me to experience. There's something about it that does not pull me to it.
Oh, my children actually love it.
Yeah, well, good.
And I used to make it, but it was kind of hard to keep up with. So you've got this like SCOBY, this live swimming yucky looking thing. And then you take tea
bunch of
and
fungus.
sugar and it just ferments, and it's got this kind of vinegarish taste, but it's tangy and it's bubbly. And it's good for the gut. It's got that live bacteria. And so it had been a while since I drank kombucha, and also influenced me, hey, that sounds good. I should have some more kombucha.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about, that stomach acid and all the things. So anyway, I just don't know.
What are you thinking about?
Well, I
with
mean,
stomach acid?
it may be tasty and good, and you can eat some sauerkraut with it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another probiotic food. And what's the
Have
other?
you not tried kombucha? Not at all.
But I will. It's on my bucket list.
There you go.
I'm going to have a bucket of kombucha one day. See what I think about it. I see their flavors. They put flavors in them to kind of mask some of the.
Yeah, they kind of put like a little bit of juice in it,
and I'm thinking it gets expensive because when I see it in the health food stores, it's not a $1 drink or a $2 drink. You're paying.
It's like $2 or $3 for a
Yeah,
bottle.
you're up, and then
that's
you got.
why I don't drink it all the time.
And then you got a plastic bottle, which I have a little concern about packaging and wastes and
well, they
things
come
like
in
that.
glass bottles.
Oh, good. That's because some of the ones I've seen I thought were in plastic.
Okay,
So,
I've never bought one in a plastic.
Good. And then I think if I got into it, I would go the route that you were talking about, get the SCOBY, just have a little brew stash going.
Yeah, I think you would have fun with
Yeah,
it.
it would be.
It's like a
I might
science
like that.
experiment.
Yeah, when I'm really bored, I might take that up. Well, I want to get to the cannabis discussion. Are you going to go there or not? Later?
Sure.
I mean, do you want to pick
let's
a couple
dive in.
more herbs and then the cannabis?
No, talk about it. So he loves CBD.
Well, yeah. And I learned something because I have some familiarity with Scripture, but I don't know that I read this. This is from Exodus. He says, "And then the Lord said to Moses, take the following fine spices, 500 shekels of liquid myrrh, half as much of fragrant cinnamon, and 250 shekels of cannabis, which is cannabis evidently, 500 shekels of cassia, and it will be the sacred anointing oil." And so from the Old Testament, he's pulling in that, this is something that goes way back in the history of humans, their relationship with cannabis. Reefer madness, Cheech and Chong, stone flicks, blah, blah, blah. And modern science has confirmed what we've known for many years. Cannabis is a powerful healing plan. And, I know people who have benefited medically from cannabis, and I do think we're learning more about medical therapeutics, and he does say he's interested in that. But he suggests that the United States government holds a patent on cannabis, and I was going to look that patent up because I wasn't sure what the patent says, And he was saying that the government is trying to restrict cannabis for some reason, whether did you pick up on what he was trying to say, that the government's holding this back from the public when it has all these benefits? And yet I know on the other side of this, we have young people, we have the recreational use of this drug, not only the medical use of it. And the concern that we might have for health of abuse of this substance. So I thought it was, he just kind of, again, light touches this and says, this is good stuff. It ought to be, I think he's saying it ought to be legal across the board and regulated maybe, which it's a good conversation like we've done with alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think CBD is very promising and
well, that's CBD is the cannabinoids.
So he's talking about all the different.
Yeah. There are 3 different forms of, I think the medicinals, right?
Yeah, he talks about CBD and where is it?
Yeah, I think it's in the back. He gives the 3.
But anyway,
yeah.
I think the unfortunate part is that although it could be really helpful, it's still way more expensive than taking your prescription medications that are covered by insurance. And so, unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to see like a huge surge in it until it's more affordable to take. But
oh, he's going to say something. Okay.
I believe that part of the reason why it's so expensive is because it isn't legal.
Yeah.
Everything is, experimental, and the government's not allowing, not signing off on it. And if the government, doesn't matter what the states do, it's when the federal government allows it to happen, and who knows when that will be, then the price, because then you will have a complete supply and demand reversal.
Yeah.
Because I know of many tobacco farms that are sitting empty right now,
Just waiting.
just waiting for them to say, okay, it's legal, because they can switch just like that. It's the same soil. And you will have many, 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 many more people getting into it when it's legal. Because right now, no one knows, because really even the CBD part is on the verge of them changing their mind. So until everything is out in the open and able to be a go, I believe it will continue to be
he
more
says
expensive.
This plant has anti-inflammatory properties, anti-cancer, antioxidant, anticonvulsant, antidepressant, and analgesic properties. And he says, our government is two-faced on this issue. On one hand, the government says the cannabis is a dangerous Schedule I drug with no medicinal value. On the other hand, the government holds U.S. patent number 6630507 titled Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants. It reads, cannabinoids have been found to have antioxidant properties useful in the treatment of a wide variety of diseases, such as anti-inflammatory and autoimmune diseases, and to have application as neuroprotective in the treatment of neurodegenerative disease. So yes, the government knows that cannabis is a medicine, but is forced to demonize it and suppress it in favor of pharmaceutical sales, and we blindly follow, which I think goes along a little bit with Mark Hyman's book, The Food Fix, where he was suggesting there were some partnerships between power players in corporate areas and in government policy making. So I think this author has an energy for this. And so I think it's a provocative conversation that we probably are going to be following for the next few years. And there are some states who have decided, what wasn't it, Colorado?
Colorado and Washington and now California. Actually, the list is completely growing.
And what I was going to say is, with those experiments, if you want to call them, at a smaller level instead of a national level, we'll be able to get more information about, are these things working, or can they be improved, or is this a bad idea? Nobody should do this again. So anyway, so that's so if you are interested in the podcast about that topic, this author is willing to engage you on it. He has a 21-day plan. I didn't really see the 21-day plan very clearly. Did you get a sense of it? The other books we have will devote, the back of their book to say, here's the plan, here's how you run it. And I felt like he just had a weight loss, 21-day weight loss diet that he was suggesting. And then he gave you a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was it. And a guide to eating out and things to avoid.
Right. But so kind of a smack dab in the middle of the book on page 77, he's got this, tear this page out and post on refrigerator.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Do these things every day for 21 days.
There you go.
I like the first one a lot. Spend 20 to 30 minutes in motivational videos or books to raise your standards and define your success. Now, quick shout out to my business partner, Lucy. She calls this brain food.
What is your business? Why don't you tell us?
Oh, thanks. So I am Kristen with Well Balanced Nutrition. We are a private practice made up of 2 registered dietitians. Contact us for all your nutrition questions, hang-ups, or concerns. Visit us at wellbalancednutrition.com.
Mm-hmm. And brain food?
So, yeah, she calls it brain food, right? Because it's not only important what we put in our mouth, but what we feed our mental health. So, if you're watching the news constantly or listening to people complain constantly, that's negative brain food. And what Dr. Blair suggests is spending 20 to 30 minutes watching or listening to something positive. And we call that brain food at Well Balanced Nutrition. So I loved that. He says, research nutritional and herbal remedies to make informed decisions.
And are you going to do that every day? That one struck me as that's something I would do before I start this, maybe.
That's true.
I don't know, but anyway.
Something to do for 21 days straight. Interesting. Laugh and cry, or laugh until you cry.
I love that. Yeah. That is big on my list.
reduce sugar and white carbohydrate consumption.
We agree.
Yeah. I hate when it's lumped into white carbohydrate, but it's
okay.
oversimplified, but yeah. Enjoy a cheat meal occasionally. Forgive yourself and refocus when you fail. Healthy living is a journey. I've already talked about how I feel about that.
Well, I was going to go back to that white carbohydrate thing.
Oh,
and I was thinking if he'd said reduce sugar and processed foods, I would have been happier.
I agree.
Okay. Yes, you have talked about cheat and language.
Drink pomegranate juice. What'd you call it? Jigulan tea?
However you say it.
And kombucha. Ooh, okay.
And you're doing 2 of those, right? Or you did all 3 of them?
No, I'm not drinking that tea. I was drinking Kava tea.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But I am doing pomegranate juice.
And he doesn't have drink Kava in his list, does he? And he loved it.
But listen, the next one is take adaptogens or adaptogenic herbs such as ashwagandha for stress. And I don't know if he lumped Kava in there.
It's an adaptogen, so maybe we can say that's where it's hiding. Because he devoted a good conversation to that. And there's even a picture of him drinking it.
Hey, do you want to talk about adaptogens for people who maybe haven't heard of that term?
Well, yeah.
It's an herb, or, it can be an herb that has this generalized helpful ability to strengthen our adrenal glands and response to stress.
Yeah, I think what it's doing is it's tempering the swings and bringing things back to the middle. When you think of homeostasis maybe as a teeter-totter, with excesses or deficiencies, and the teeter-totter gets balanced, and it's adapting back to normal.
Yeah.
So whether you're swinging too far one way or too far the other way, it
brings us back to the
and it's
middle.
interesting that it works on both extremes.
Yeah.
It adapts you back to a more normal.
And it just kind of strengthens our body's response to outside stressors. Okay, well, let's move on. So take 5,000 IU vitamin D for immune health. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing he says is exercise, get out and move, walk 10 to 20 minutes or more. Build yourself up to run if you can, take a yoga class or do some yoga at home. Mm-hmm. So that's his 21-day plan.
Yeah, and I would have added something about having a social relationship somewhere in there, love on somebody. And that would make your day really good too. So I think this is an interesting book. It was provocative for me to read. I found myself having reactions to it. And so, Dr. Blair, I want to thank you for giving us a book that provoked us and helped us, introduced me to some new ideas. And I'm glad I read it. So if you're interested in trying some of these supplements, these herbs, that's one of the things that I do. I represent a company that has a very nice line, clean line, green line, proven line of nutritional supplements. My company's name is 360 Health, and I am happy to talk to anyone who would like to find out about ashwagandha or alfalfa and other herbs that he's listed in his book.
Great.
You can find me at 360health4u.com.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Mm-hmm. Bye, Kristen.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.